Hi everyone. My name is Destiny. I feel like I should tell you a little bit about myself first before I jump right in. I'm a senior undergrad. I go to the University of Illinois at Springfield. Yes, there is a Springfield location. Springfield campus. Um, basically, I wanted to start this channel because as an English major, I just wanted to help out and, help you out in any way with your writing or papers or whatever. So, the story that we're going to start off with, first, excuse my camera. It's a little bogus. It's on my laptop. I was going to use my phone, but I didn't know how that would upload. So, we'll stick with this. You don't need to see me that clearly. You just need to hear me. So the story that I wanted to first start off with is a short story. It's by Anton Chekhov. Please forgive me if I am butchering these names, but it's the short story, The Lady with the Dog. Um, so basically, I'll just start off with a summary. So it's about this guy named Dmitry Gurov. Again, this is not a pronunciation of names. Dmitry Gurov. He is, I guess, a man who's a little under 40. He's vacationing in a Russian city called Yalta. He's at like a resort. Um, and he meets this woman named Anna. I'm not even going to try to say her last name. And, they hit it off and they kind of have like a little secret love affair because both of them are married. Now, basically, they have this little affair while they're in Yalta together. They learn about each other and things like that. And then, of course, it's time for one of them to leave. So Anna ends up getting a call from her husband and she has to return home. And then Dmitry ends up wanting to go home as well. So they depart both ways. They agree to never see each other again. Well, they think that they're never going to see each other again because they each have separate lives. And this was just kind of like one small chapter in their life, something that probably wasn't supposed to happen at all because they're married. So there are many things you could, and excuse me from flipping through pages. This is my first one, so it's not really as organized as I would like. But there are a lot of different things that you could analyze in this story. You could analyze setting, plot, theme, characters, all those literary elements you could analyze. In this video specifically, I will be analyzing two things. Help you out with two things. If you have questions about anything else, you can just comment on the video. I'll probably get back to you on that. But the two things that I'm going to focus on is narration and characterization. I found those two things to be very interesting. So that's what I chose to analyze. I actually have a paper to write on this. I have to turn it in Monday. So I'll be working on it. Haven't really worked out everything that I personally want to say about it, but we can just talk about some things that I found so far, some interesting things that stood out to me when I was reading it. So let's start with anything that you analyze, any story that you want to analyze. You should start off by asking yourself some questions, some basic questions. So with this story, why read it? Why care about this story? What makes this story great? Why are there so many analysis papers on it? Why is it a topic of discussion at all? And personally, I think it is Chekhov's ability to evoke emotion, from the readers. He has managed to evoke sympathy for these two very dislikable, detestable characters, So that's one thing. That's why I think that we read it and we study it, because it's like, how did he do that? Why do you feel the way you feel about these two characters by the end of the story? So I guess I should ask, how do you feel about them? You know, did you feel sorry for them? Did you want them to be together at the end? Or do you feel like they were bad people and they didn't deserve any type of, um, they didn't deserve any good to happen to them for what they did? So, so basically ask yourself if you wanted Anna and Dimitri to be together. I personally, because I am a hopeless romantic, I wanted them to be together. I understood that they were both married and had different lives and they cheated and that was wrong. But for some reason, at the end of the story, I wanted them to be together. I wanted them to have a happily ever after and everything to work out in their favor. So if you feel the way I feel, ask yourself why. Do they really deserve it? I mean, they're bad people, though. They're adulterers, they're cheaters, they're liars, you know. Um, so why should they even have any happiness whatsoever? Why do they deserve that? You know. Um, so ask yourself those questions when you're reading and see what answers you come up with. One of the big questions is, if you do feel sympathy for them, how? Why? How did Chekhov manage to make you feel that way? What is it in the story that's making you feel conflicted? Because you honestly should feel conflicted a little bit. You should be like, oh, I don't know how I want to feel about these characters. And that's good because that means that the author has created a complex character, So think about that. So I guess one of the questions that I want to bring up is, how did he make readers care about these two characters? How did he do that? And I think he did this artfully, cleverly, and masterfully through the characterization and through narration. So let's begin with characterization. I'll be flipping through the story because, as you can see, I have notes everywhere on here. So let's begin with Dimitri. In the beginning of the story, we learn that he's on vacation and he's went on this vacation without his family. So right there, that tells you something about him. He may be up to something, whatever. We learned that he was married. He's under 40. He married young. He has a daughter who's 12 years old and two sons whom they didn't say how old they were. But so we learned that. We learned that he is married and that he was married during his second year of college. But one important thing that we learned early is his feelings toward his wife and women in general. In the story, he says that he secretly considered her unintelligent, narrow, inelegant, was afraid of her, and did not like to be at home. He had begun being unfaithful to her long ago, had been unfaithful to her often, and probably on that account almost always spoke ill of women. And when they were talked about in his presence, he used to call them the lower race. So right there, that tells us a lot about his character. Right there, the narrator is, helping us get this. We're envisioning this man, and he's shaping our perception of this man. So right there, I know immediately I was thinking of him like, oh, what an asshole. That's how you feel about your wife, the woman you marry, and then you think women as the lesser race, the lower race, that's very misogynistic. So right there, I have a negative viewpoint of him just based off a few sentences. And that's something that that's how he characterized him. That's how Chekhov characterized this man right from the beginning. So yeah, and then, throughout the story, we learn more about how he is with women and men, and how even though he considers them the lower race, he can't go a day without them. He just has to be around women. So I didn't think anything of that except for he's a man, can't live without women, he's probably really into sex or some type of physical act. He just really wants to be involved with women, even though he doesn't think much of them at all. He thinks of them as probably just disposable toys, something to play with and, you know, use for what he can, basically, because he doesn't think much of them. So let's, move on. So then we won't go through every single thing, every single detail, but just right away we are given a negative viewpoint of him. And it's the way the narrator speaks of him that we come to get this viewpoint. So let's so let's skip up to when he meets the woman, Anna. So he sees her, the lady. I guess they're on this little dock or whatever area. Yeah, he was dining in the gardens. Yeah, so that's where he met her, basically. And she has a little Pomeranian dog. I actually have a Pomeranian dog too. But yeah, he has a Pomeranian dog, and he immediately knows that he wants her. Like, he sees her and he's like, oh, I've been seeing her for some days. I want that. I'm gonna tap that. I can get that. That's his mindset, So already there, that's still you know, shaping my perception of him, just how the story is written, how the narrator speaks about him, that narration, that characterization thing going on, how he speaks of him. I'm learning like, this man is disgusting. Like, that's all he's thinking about is this woman and how he wants her. I'm in the middle of recording and my roommate wants to call me. So, back to this. So yeah, he meets the woman. He gets acquainted with her. They have a little chit chat, and they hit it off because they end up hanging out and stuff like that. They walk and talk and things like that. And yeah, so he learns a little bit about her. He learns that where she's from and that she has a husband. So that's the key thing. He learns that she has a husband. For one, he already immediately thought like, oh, the way she walks, the way she talks, I think she is a married woman. That's a lady right there. And he doesn't give a care. He doesn't care at all that she's married. And he doesn't really think too much of her husband. He's just, oh, she's here, she's alone, whatever. I can get at her. I can get her, she's here by herself. So one thing that I wanted to point out is a specific paragraph. It's still in the kind of the beginning. It's still in the first section. The very end of it, he says, afterwards, he thought about her in his room and hotel. Thought she would certainly meet him the next day. It would be sure to happen. As he got into bed, he thought how lately she had been a girl at school, doing lessons like his own daughter. He recalled the diffidence, the angularity that was still manifest in her laugh and her manner of talking like with a stranger. This must have been the first time in her life that she had been alone in surroundings in which she was followed, looked at, and spoken to merely from a secret motive which she could hardly fail to guess. He recalled her slender, delicate neck, her lovely gray eyes. There's something pathetic about her, anyway, he thought, and fell asleep. So, right there, if you're doing a little bit of close reading right there, you're learning that he's really just interested in getting in her pants, really. Yeah, that's all he's worried about, and he's noticing that he's intrigued. He's intrigued by her innocence, by her youth. She's younger than him, That's another point. I don't know if I brought that up earlier. She's younger than him, and he's intrigued by this. Something is interesting about her. But notice that he said there's something pathetic about her. And that's an interesting use of words right there. Pathetic. So look that up and reread that and marinate on what that word means and what that means in this context. So they a week go past and they're hanging out and stuff like that. And they're kissing and stuff and trying to, keep it a secret. And then they end up having sex, basically. Yeah. And then we learn some other things. So another important section to look at is when Guthrove looked at her and thought, what different people one meets in the world. From the past, he preserved memories of careless, good-natured women who loved cheerfully and were grateful to him for the happiness he gave them, however brief it might be, and of women like his wife who loved without any genuine feeling, with superfluous phrases, affectedly, hysterically, with an expression that suggested that it was not love nor passion, but something more significant, and of 2 or 3 others, very beautiful, cold women, whose faces he caught a glimpse of a rapacious expression, an obstinate desire to snatch from life more than it could give. And these were capricious, unreflecting, domineering, unintelligent women, not in the first youth, and when Gurov grew cold to them, their beauty excited his hatred, and their lace on their linen seemed to him like scales. So that part is kind of letting you into his giving you insight into his psyche and how he sees women. And from there we learn that he's only met a few different types of women. They're either I guess they're just kind of all the same. Yeah, it's a lot in there, and I don't really want to get into that, into really deeply reading into that part right now. But basically from that, because we're pressed for time, I don't want this to be super long. So, yeah, so he's basically used to these same type of women, and then he ends up being disgusted by them, and he's distrusting of them. And then that last line, when he grew cold to them, their beauty excited his hatred, and the lace on their linen seemed to him like scales. Scales, that's like a reptile. And what reptile comes to mind? Snakes. They're sneaky. So that's letting you know that he's just really not that into women. He's not trusting of them. But then the next paragraph, he talks about Anna, and he talks about how different she is, and how after they had sex, her attitude was way different than the other girls. It was strange and inappropriate. He called it somehow peculiar. He could tell from her that she felt like a sinner, So if you read that section, he's like, wow, you're different. You don't act like the other women that I've slept with, the married ones, the ones that were looking for adventure, excitement, the ones that were just looking for sex. You are completely different. You feel bad. So yeah, we can go through that basically. And one thing that I want you guys to look at or pay attention to is the fact that Dmitri doesn't have a lot of dialogue. He doesn't say anything. Anna, we get a lot of we get a lot of sections where she's saying things to him, but we don't get that from him. We don't hear him talking. It's like he almost doesn't have an opinion of anything. It's like he's just so distant and aloof and nonchalant. He just doesn't really care. He's like, whatever. Are we gonna have sex or what? Are you gonna cry about it? What? So that's how I was feeling about him the entire time. Like he was just so distant, so aloof, just so not caring about anything, just so not in tune with what is going on in the present. He's just so focused on the past women and how they're all the same. And I'm just looking for something, some adventure, something like that. So if we go down to about line 36, well, we can go to probably around 30. And this is like after they've had sex, and she's like, it's wrong. You'll be the first to despise me now. So, and this would be a part where I would think some dialogue would be happening. Like I'm thinking that, oh, Dimitri's going to say something right now, He doesn't say anything. He gets a piece of watermelon and he eats. And then it says that there was a half an hour of silence. That's a long time. A half an hour of silence. So, yeah, so we get a little description about Anna. And then finally, Dimitri says, how could I despise you? You don't know what you were saying. And, if you look into that, he's like, how can I even say something bad about you when I'm exactly the same way? But the thing is, I wonder, at this point, did she know he was married? I don't think at this point he knew she knew he was married. I don't know. But either way, he's like, how could I despise you? I'm exactly the same. We're the same. So then if we go down, Anna goes on this rant about how she's a bad woman and she shouldn't say anything that would justify her actions. She talks about her husband and how he's a flunky and how she married him young and she just wants something better. And actually, I'll read that. So it says, I was 20 when I was married to him. I have been tormented by curiosity. I wanted something better. There must be some different sort of life, I said to myself. I wanted to live, to live, to live. I was fired by curiosity. You don't understand it, but I swear to God, I could not control myself. Something happened to me. I could not be restrained. I told my husband I was ill and came here. And here I have been walking about as though I have dazed like a mad creature. And now I have become a vulgar, contemptible woman whom anyone may despise. And then the next line after that is, believe it or not, no dialogue from Dimitri. Again, he doesn't have anything to say, which is pretty weird. He says he felt bored. Gurov, his last name, felt bored already listening to her. He was irritated by the naive tone, by this remorse, so unexpected and inopportune. But for the tears in her eyes, he might have thought she was jesting or playing a part. So, one thing, this woman is really, she's like having a moment where she's just expressing all of her feelings. Like she's so, overcome with emotion that she's just telling him, she's letting it, and he's kind of a stranger, even though they had sex. He's essentially a stranger. She doesn't know him like that. And she's just expressing herself to him. And it says that he felt bored. So one thing, initially I was like, damn, he's cold-hearted, He doesn't even feel any type of way. And she's like having a mental breakdown. She's so upset with herself. And he doesn't even care. He's like, I'm bored. But when I looked closely at this section, I thought about it when I was thinking about his character and who he is and what type of person he is. He says, I felt bored already listening to her. And I thought of it as yeah, he felt bored because he feels the same way. He's been saying the same thing to himself. He feels the exact same way as she does. But, and he's trying to not, he doesn't want to open up and say, oh, I feel the same way. That's what my life is. I don't like my life, and my wife isn't the woman that I want. He's just like, yeah, because he feels that same way. This is nothing new to him. So, but then they talk and they get over that, blah, 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 and now we're hitting the 30-minute mark sooner. So I just want to get through some more things. As far as the narration, because I could talk forever on this, of course, and I have to for my paper, but I'll probably end up doing a updated video on this once I actually finish my paper. It'll be more together. I just want to put one video up and get this started. But one thing I would pay attention to, because I said that the important thing as to why we read this story is because Chekhov managed to evoke sympathy from the readers. I mean, assuming you feel the way I felt, that they wanted to be together. And he did this through the narration and the characterization. So throughout the story, we notice a shift in Dimitri's character. At first he seems like just this misogynistic asshole who's just trying to have sex with the next woman he can because he's unhappy with his wife. But then as the story moves on, and especially in like the third section where we're learning about how he feels, how he's feeling about his life, how he's feeling about Anna. It's like a section where he's like lovesick and he can't eat and he can't sleep, and then it's how he can't get her out his head and how he's so fed up with his life. And that is the clever way how Chekhov transforms our feelings about him. He made this man seem more human in a sense. He's a human being, and our initial perception of him changed as we went through the story, because at first we didn't know anything. We didn't know anything of his thoughts and feelings. We were just told immediately that he cheats on his wife. He's always done it, and he hates women. They're the lower race. But as we read it and we learn about his newfound feelings for Anna, it's like it changes how we feel about him, So that's the beauty in it. And then it's not real pretty language like, oh, he realized that she was the woman he was looking for his whole life. No, it wasn't that. It was real subtle at how he did it. And that's the key. I think that's what makes this story so great. Chekhov subtly brought you into this transformation. He subtly changed your mind about him. If you look at the language he used, so think about the words he used. When he talked about them kissing, he would say he softly and affectionately. It wasn't just a meaningless kiss. You could tell by the language used that it meant something. One section that, if you go to like line 52, that whole paragraph, talking about how every day they met at 12 o'clock, blah, blah, blah. And he talks about, and it's, passionately, they kissed passionately. But then he said it was idle, so that those don't go together. How is it idle? Meaningless, trivial, but it's passionate. And then he said that it made a new man of him, So right then we're learning, we're seeing that this character is capable of change, that he's a human being who can't help how he feels, that, he can't help that he doesn't love his wife, So we're, as human beings, we're reading and we're processing this and we're thinking of him as a real person, this was so realistic to me. You know, it wasn't like a fairy tale. That's why I like the story. It didn't give you a fairy tale ending, and nothing in it was fairy tale at all. You know, it was like a real ass situation. Um, so yeah, and then it talks about how he told Anna how beautiful she was, how fascinating, and he was impatiently passionate. You know, impatiently passionate. You know, think of it, listen to how that sounds. You know, that sounds romantic. You know, that is making me feel like, oh, he's in love. You know, he's falling in love with her. And, you know, it's making me think of him, and it made me think of him in a different light. And hopefully it made you guys think of him in a different light as well. Um, Something that this relationship that he considered so idle, so meaningless, so trivial, so, you know, unimportant, it significantly changed him. You know, it changed him into a different man. So, I'm gonna wrap this up now, but basically, important things to pay attention to is the language used in this story. You know, that if you felt one way about him in the beginning and your feelings changed, go back and look and see why your feelings changed. And I know I personally looked at the characterization, the narration, and saw that it was the style, it was the way the narrator spoke of the events happening. It was the way he spoke about Dimitri's feelings. And, you know, it's the way he described his actions. You know, they shifted from this negative view. You know, it shifted from this negative way into this longing and this desire. And it resonates with me because it's like, wow, I'm longing and desiring for him to finally obtain happiness, you know, finally be with someone that makes him happy. So yeah, when you go back through the story, one thing that you should do is always, when you have a paper or something, reread the story. Like I just read this story for the first time. I was supposed to have read it a couple years ago in another class. I must have skipped over it because this is the first time I'm reading it. And my professor was like, oh yeah, we read this in 301. And I'm like, I don't remember reading it. So I like that this is kind of a new story that I actually didn't do it, and now I have to do a paper on it. So I'm still rereading it and trying to figure out exactly which points I want to talk about in my paper. But basically, it will be about the narration and characterization and Chekhov's ability to make us feel some type of way. You know, he changed our initial perception of him and Anna. Anna and Dimitri, we feel differently about these characters at the end than how we felt at the beginning. You know, it makes us care about their issues. Like, wow, are they going to get to be together? Are they finally, you know, are they going to be forced to stay in these loveless marriages, these commitments that they're not even really, that they don't enjoy at all? You know, are they going to have to live in secrecy forever? You know, if you care about those issues, ask yourself why you care. Why is it that you want to know how it ends? Why do you want to know that? And it's because Chekhov made you. He made you want to know that, and he did it. It may be a different technique that you think, you know, you may think he did that in a different way. I personally think he did it by through the narrator and how he characterized them. Those two can kind of merge together if you put it that way. I'll probably be separating it because it'll just be, I think it'll make my paper flow better and then they'll overlap. But those two things, that's how I think he managed to change our perception about this lying, cheating, misogynistic man, and wanting us to really, you know, want him to find happiness and want them to be together. So, if you're writing a paper on this story now, I hope you guys found this interesting. I hope it helped you think. You know, it's not, I didn't do this to give you all the answers to your paper. I did this to help you and push you in the right direction as to what you should be asking yourself, what you should be thinking about when you're reading this story. And yeah, that's it. Like I said earlier, I'll probably make another video, break it down a little better to give you more clear, because I know it was a lot of rambling on and going through things. But yeah, I think this should help you out. It's a good start. It's a good start to my video collection. And bye.